welcome to everybody on today's webinar from Qlic IT, talking about ensuring your IT environment is protected, but more importantly, just being cyber aware in terms of the threat landscape. So I'm going to be with you for about the next 10 minutes or so, and then I'm actually going to hand over to a colleague of mine, Jamie, who's going to be taking you through an overview of some products and services that can help secure your IT environment. So an absolute honor and privilege to be on today's webinar from Qlic. We are from Qlic and from Datto, who is a global tech organization that is primarily in the security space, protecting SMBs and SMEs across the globe with over 6,000 employees and huge amounts of technology and services to protect IT environments across the globe. My name is Greg Jones. I'm Vice President of Business Development, helping our partners, the likes of Qlic, making sure that you have everything to protect your business and keep you up and running and operational. Today's presentation for the next 10 minutes or so is all around the business landscape, what has changed since COVID-19, and really an update for 2023. We've seen an absolute huge shift in the cyber and threat landscape since COVID-19. Many businesses had to get up and running overnight on the back of COVID-19 and are now operating more profitably, more productively than ever before by just using technology to their advantage. I know Qlic was busy helping all of their partners get operational and really kickstart the cogs of industry again after COVID-19 shut the doors to many global organizations across the world. However, although there was a great influx of remote business and technology being used to an advantage, giving many organizations a competitive advantage, there was also a huge downside to that. Cybercrime and ransomware has jumped to an all-time high. The threat landscape has absolutely exploded. Why? Because there is such an opportunity for bad actors now. It pains me to say that these bad actors, these criminal organizations, are amazing businesses. They are huge organizations. They are operating many geographical locations across the globe. They operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to exploit your organization. They are very, very advanced. They even have customer services departments that help you pay the likes of ransomware. And many things have evolved, not only with COVID, but the recent developments in the likes of the Ukraine. We actually seen a fallout of one of the largest hacking groups around the war in the Ukraine. And they actually leaked some commercial documents around their criminal organization. And that actually gives us some insights to how these bad entities operate. And it was absolutely phenomenal. They have huge budgets around sales, marketing, training, development, customer services. They even incentivize all of their hackers and also their sales teams who are constantly looking to exploit businesses. Why is that? Well, that is because, as I mentioned before, the threat landscape has changed massively. Overnight, the world shifted, we pivoted. Many adverts across the globe now are looking for remote workers. We are seeing workers traverse networks in the likes of coffee shops, home networks. We're seeing business data traversing with home network data, the likes of games and Netflix and the likes. We are living in a different world now. It is very, very hard to protect organizations. I know Qlic are working round the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to protect the clients that they work with lots of enterprise grade technology. So what do those threats look like? Unfortunately today, on today's webinar, we don't have enough time to go into all of these. So I'm just going to select a few. The threat landscape is absolutely exploding at the moment. And a few of the things that Qlic can help you with is not only protecting the normal IT environments that you would expect, like a work desktop or a laptop, but also things within your environment that sometimes are possibly overlooked. The likes of the IoT devices, the Internet of Things, CCTV cameras, door access control. We recently seen a large scale enterprise being hacked and ransomware being deployed because they'd plugged in a Wi-Fi kettle into their IT environment. Anything that connects to your business network is a threat, and that is something that certainly Qlic can work with you to look at the threats around not only your normal IT environment, but your whole business environment. CCTV, door access control, joking aside, Wi-Fi kettles, or that Amazon Alexa sat in the corner. We've seen one of the largest hacks in a casino happen recently, and it wasn't because they blew the doors off or run in with guns. It was literally they exploited a thermometer in a marine fish tank in the reception. These guys came in, had a coffee, connected to the remote thermometer that the fish organization that managed the fish tank used to manage and regulate the temperature, and they were able to gain backdoor access to the network and steal the high roller database. This is absolutely huge at the moment. Also insider threats as well, whether that be disgruntled employees, accidentally employees clicking on something or doing something or plugging in a USB pen drive. As I say, we are a global organization that has a global reach, and we are seeing the threats across the global landscape explode at the moment. What are some of those threats? Some of them are still USB pen drives being left in parking lots of businesses that they want to exploit. Sometimes it's they ask your cleaners that have authorized access to your premises to actually plug something in. They are being told, we will give you £5,000-10,000 or dollars to just plug this device in when you go in. Now, that's really interesting, because what happens when a cleaner or a cleaning company comes into your work environment? Well, usually if they come into your office, that's the time that you usually leave, maybe lock your desktop, go get a coffee, let them carry on, and you come back to a clean office. Would you know that if they had plugged in a USB pen drive? Would you know if they changed your network cable or plugged something in between your machine and the network? The answer is probably not, because I'm not that diligent when I'm looking at my machine. So this is just food for thought. We're also seeing large-scale organizations and bad actors approach employees of businesses and saying, can we use your credentials to access the system for 1 hour? We will give you £5,000, £10,000, £15,000 or dollars to literally just give us your credentials. They usually approach at the end of the month or when they know businesses are struggling or individuals. So the threat landscape has massively evolved. We've seen a 300% increase in cybercrime since COVID-19. 92% of ransomware attacks have happened on businesses. This has nearly doubled since COVID-19. And 59% of organizations like Qlic, managed service providers, have said they've seen an increase in ransomware attacks since COVID-19. Many businesses think it won't happen to them. However, SMBs and SMEs equate to about 80% of all of the ransomware and cyber attacks out there. 60% of all businesses that have a cyber attack or ransomware actually go out of business. They do not recover. Why? Well, sometimes it's not just about the money. Sometimes it's about reputational damage in the marketplace, and we see organizations that are exploited lose vast amount of their business, up to 40, 50, 60% within days of an outage or an attack. It's your reputation on the line. When we talk about ransomware and cybercrime, about £6,500 across the SMB SME sector is lost due to downtime at the moment. That is the average cost. It usually equates to a lot more than that when you look at the bigger impact of an outage. It's not just the time that you are offline at all. We are still seeing phishing attacks being the top threat across the SMB landscape, really. 32% of businesses actually experienced a phishing attack last year, and 49% said they had actually had a phishing attack at some point within their business. It is the number one security risk to SMB businesses. Just being aware and having solutions that the likes of Qlic can help you implement within your business to protect your environment. And remember, it's not always malicious. Sometimes it's actually accidental. So 91% of all attacks, when we get back to the root source, usually come through from an exploitation around a phishing or a whaling attack. And at the moment, around about 40 billion is actually being spent on protecting SMB, SME organizations. Security within your business is no longer an optional extra or a luxury. It is something that you have to make sure you continue to be operational should anything happen within your business, accidentally, maliciously, or whether you are a direct target or attack. So how can businesses protect their organizations, because there's so much technology on offer? Well, working with the likes of Qlic, where they can actually come in, look at your estate and your environment, and give you a holistic 360 approach to protect the whole of your environment. Here at Qlic and Datto, we are a global organization, I mentioned before, with thousands of employees, been valued at over 19 billion. Our job is about bringing enterprise-grade technology down to support SMBs, to support our partners, the likes of Qlic, to protect your environment. We have a huge amount of tools, technology and services to protect your environment. But today it is not about selling to you or pitching to you or selling you the benefits. I'm going to now hand over to one of my colleagues, Jamie, who's actually going to talk to you a little bit more in depth around some of these products and services. I just wanted to give you an overview today around how the threat landscape has evolved within the cyber world. And then I'm going to be staying around for some questions at the end. Jamie, do we have you on the line, sir?
I am here indeed, yes. Thank you.
Fantastic. Over to you, sir.
Fantastic. And thank you for that, Greg. And I think there's a lot of important points that Greg's raised there. And I think the key one for me and where we're going to move into for this part of today's session is making sure that we take these insights that Greg shared and strategies to make sure that we're, accounting for these bad actors and possible different areas of data loss, and making sure that we're equitable with that focus. And somewhere that's been largely neglected over the last few years, and partly because of the speed of having to adopt it, has been the use of SaaS applications. So that's where we're going to look in a little bit more detail now with myself here. So first and foremost, when we think about the threat landscape, what are the key areas that we're looking at in terms of the concerns that you're facing? And just to verify, if someone can with me, my presentation has moved, but I just want to check.
Yeah, sorry, you need to share your content again, Jamie. Sorry.
No worries. Right. I'll do so now. I caught my eye, so I wanted to make sure that was the case. So let me do so. 1 second. Let's see if it allows me to share. Hopefully that is showing you the correct screen now. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Perfect. So really, what are the key areas that we're looking for here? Well, Greg's alluded a lot to already the cyber threat aspect, actually making sure that we're mitigating the risks that are being driven towards us by the bad actors there. But there's also an area of compliance, both from geographical, the likes of GDPR, as a regional one, and sometimes industry specific as well. And as always, it's trying to match these into budgets as well. And a large part of the focus, like Greg has already mentioned, is, can you afford to not spend in this area? The reality is no, because it costs a lot more not to in this day and age, unfortunately. So moving on, this is really the focus for most SMEs today, and this should not look too dissimilar to your organization in terms of a data footprint in today's world. Now, the area you're of course keenly focused and concerned around is the applications and data. Can you and your employees access the data, the applications that they need to keep the wheels turning in terms of the motions of business? Now, set underneath that, those apps and data sits in a myriad of areas, very different. So we have traditional server environments, private clouds, public clouds like Azure, SaaS applications like Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace, and of course end user devices, whether that be laptops, PCs, mobile phones, etc. So your key and critical data now is spread across all these different locations. The challenge for yourself and Qlic, which is why they're bringing this to your attention today, is that you have to defend the data in all of these different areas. Unfortunately, the bad guys just need one route in to ruin your day. And that's the challenge that most businesses are facing in today. Now, we're going to focus specifically on the SaaS application side today because it's the fastest growing area of data growth for every SMB, frankly, enterprise as well out there. And the result of that has been over the last few years for obvious reasons. So what have we seen in terms of an evolution of SaaS data? And really, frankly, understanding where your critical data lives. In fact, one thing I would challenge everyone to try and answer today, and if they can't, make sure you speak to your Qlic team, is do you even understand how much of your data is living in the likes of Microsoft 365? Most people I ask that question to give an answer that tends to be different in reality. So actually understanding how much of my data footprint lives there, how much of my critical assets are either traversing through or outright living there. Now, as with all the data, wherever it's at, as I mentioned, you need layers of protection. There's no one silver bullet, unfortunately, when it comes to protecting your data. So here at Datto and Qlic, and why Qlic have partnered with us, we really look at three key pillars in terms of a strategy protecting this key and crucial data. The first being security. Obviously, we want to prevent as much as we possibly can, even getting the opportunity to enter your environments. Recovery, which is one of our focus areas we're talking on today, is essentially your last line of defense and a crucial element of any security strategy. If something does go wrong, and actually that word is the wrong one I used, when something goes wrong, unfortunately, is the reality of today's day and age, how am I going to be able to mitigate the impact this could have on my organization, my business? Well, the recovery is the element of that strategy. And the last part is actually training and enablement of your employees. This is probably not the first time you've heard it, but the biggest risk to your data in your business is your employees. The users are the biggest risk to the data. So we need to make sure that we're addressing that and mitigating as much of the threat landscape as we can by actually reducing the impact that can be afforded from the employee standpoint as well. So adoption of SaaS applications continues to grow faster than ever. This is why Qlic have asked you to come and have this conversation with us today. I think that's a little bit of a glib statement because everyone's fully aware of this now. But the reality is, even before the pandemic, Google Drive was hitting over 1 billion users. Microsoft was certainly getting much more aggressive about moving customers onto this platform, and for good reason. They're fantastic tools. But then everything got expedited exponentially across the pandemic. And we saw some crazy numbers like this come out. In a 4-month period, Microsoft Teams grew by just shy of 900%. Now that's on a global basis, and that is phenomenal. It's staggering. It's quite obvious when we think about it. Everyone had to attend calls like this today, speak to your employees, speak to your own customers, and this was the platform of choice to do it. But there was a huge side effect from that as well. That side effect being all of a sudden, your employees are also exposed to the likes of OneDrive, SharePoint, all of these fantastic tools that are contained inside Microsoft 365. And wouldn't you know it, they started using them. And that's accounting for why we're seeing such huge data growth in these platforms. They make sense. They keep your teams agile, able to collaborate. and keep the business working and growing in that perspective. So we know more and more of the data within your organization is moving into SaaS applications. Is that data vulnerable? It's a reasonable question, because maybe in years past it was always vulnerable, but maybe not to the same degree as today. Greg's already mentioned around a few of the stats we've seen in terms of the likes of ransomware growth over the landscape of IT in general in the last few years. But here at Datto and Qlic, we survey our 30,000 plus MSP partners we work with on an annual basis. And in turn that accounts for hundreds of thousands of businesses. And we found that 1 in 4 reported back that ransomware was present in SaaS applications. Now, for some people that's a surprise. Most people think ransomware involves encrypting and locking down your laptop or a server perhaps. Well, no, it's been developed to target SaaS data as well. And unsurprisingly to me, over half of these reported attacks were in Microsoft 365. Now, this is a global number. I would be very much assuming that in a European region, certainly in the UK, that number is much higher, because we are, for want of a better word, a Microsoft house. Most businesses use Microsoft as their platform of choice. So the reality is there's huge growth of these attacks. Now, again, when we think about why that is, it becomes quite obvious as well. Everything I've already mentioned about the moving of data into these platforms, cyber criminals are fully aware of. They're also fully aware that most businesses haven't paid the same attention to the SaaS application as they have maybe on their local machines in past. So this has become low-hanging fruit, and we're moving towards that perfect storm right now. More and more data is traversing or living in these applications, and it's less guarded than ever. So there's an increase of those threats being developed. Now, you don't need to take my word for it, and I encourage you to do so. Type a little Google and ransomware growth over the last year, and you'll see all the industry experts out there, Gartner alike, other vendors as well, all saying the same thing. There's huge risk in not protecting your data around these SaaS applications, and actually it can lead to demise to many SMBs as a result. It's a very difficult thing to recover from. Next part I wanted to actually bring to everyone's attention today, because I find that a lot of people aren't fully aware of this, is, well, it's reasonable to think, well, if my data's with Microsoft, arguably the best IT known vendor in the world, where better could it be? And it's a reasonable thought process. Unfortunately, the reality is that's not what Microsoft are here to provide you with. What they're here to provide you with, and we call this here the shared responsibility model, they're here to provide you with a platform and to make sure that you're not affected by the likes of hardware failure, software failure, natural disasters, power outages. If we were to sum all that up, they're here to make sure that you've got access to and uptime to their platform. Now, what they're not responsible for is things like human error, programmatic errors, malicious insiders, external hackers, malware, etc. Essentially, all the reason we know data loss events occur, and they're not responsible for that. So they're not responsible for, again, summing it up, they're not responsible for the data set on the platform. That is down to you. Now, they actually go as far as recommending that you bring things like third-party backup applications and services like offered by Qlic to protect that data, and that's in the SLA. So that's those T's and C's that we always scroll to the bottom, click OK, and move on with our lives. So it's actually built in that they make this recommendation. So from the horse's mouth, they want it to be clear that that's not where they are focused. So we're going to talk about a few of the solutions that Qlic can offer you today that they partnered with Datto on. The first being around backing up of that data, that last line of defense, the recovery element. And that's achieved by Datto SaaS Protection, which powers the service that Qlic are able to bring to you. So what does it do? Well, first and foremost, it's tied straight into the Microsoft systems via what we call the API aspect. Now, that will automatically back up all of your content and data in all of these key critical areas that you have data residing in. So we have Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, Tasks, essentially all those crucial areas where your critical data is residing. And it will back that up 3 times a day to make sure that it's capturing all that data and also providing a point in time. So if you are unlucky enough to be hit by ransomware, and unfortunately most people I speak to, if they haven't been hit, know someone who has today, that's how bad it's got, you'll be able to restore to a point in time, or Qlic will be able to restore you to a point in time before that affected you, mitigating the impact that the ransomware would otherwise have in your organization. It's going to be able to restore data from other users as well into other users. So you've got customization of what you need to do here, and it's non-destructive in its restore. What I mean by that as well is if you've subsequently worked on some data and recover it, it's not going to overwrite those changes. So it's really going to protect you from those data loss scenarios that come up on that day-to-day as well. Now, I've mentioned it's being a backup and a cloud to cloud. Just a little point I wanted to raise. We have our own private cloud that we store all this data in. We store a lot of data. It still staggers me how many zeros are in an exabyte of data, but we've grown this at scale across the last just shy of 15 years to make sure that we are doing all of the due diligence around protecting your data, including regular pen testing of those environments, making sure that there's encryption on all of your data as well so that it can't be accessed. And ultimately, this is a rigorously used and tested system as well, with over 10,000 restores a month that we're finding. A lot of people lose a lot of data all the time. So what is it looking to achieve for you? Protect against permanent data loss. Greg's gone through a great myriad of examples of how data loss events can occur today, but it's, to Greg's earlier point as well, not always external threats. It could be someone internally accidentally deleting something, maybe on purpose if they're a little bit disgruntled. We've seen that as well, but it's protecting against whatever the reason for the permanent data loss scenario is. Being able to restore that data to the original user or to another user, whether that user's left the business, whether for an HR reason it needs to be restored to another user. All of these scenarios can be done as well. And ultimately offering you a nice and predictable way to align this to the service plan you're taking with Qlic. This is not based on how much your data grows. It's just based on a per user model that allows you to understand exactly what you're getting and how you're getting it. So very easy to be able to budget for and combine that as well. So that's one area of the equation, the recovery, the last line of defense. But arguably on the front line of defense is actually enabling your staff to avoid these attacks in the first instance, making sure that they're actually not susceptible to clicking those links, making sure that you're not having to recover, making sure you're not having to lose any time for your business. And we achieve that by partnering with Qlic with BullPhish ID. So why is this needed? Well, frankly, as I say, I think everyone by this point has known that wherever your data moves, the biggest risk follows it of all, which is your people. They are the biggest risk to your data, accidentally deleting items, clicking that link. And unfortunately, 1 of 3 of them are going to click that link. Phishing attacks are designed to be able to infiltrate your organization and gain access to credentials or critical information on your organization. Now, unfortunately, many people click those links, and as we can see here as well, many pass over that critical information. That might be customer data, that might be company data, that might be financial details. We've seen lots of different scenarios where actually your employees are the leak of that data through phishing attacks. Phishing attacks are still the largest known threat landscape that we see there. They own the largest proportion in play. So what are we looking to do? What are we looking to mitigate here? Well, first and foremost, the risk widens out just outside of your SaaS data. What do I mean by that? Well, if someone gives their credentials up for their Microsoft 365 login, unfortunately, 60% of the time, those same credentials are for all of your business apps that you're using across your organization. So if you are compromised, if your employees' details are taken, the chances are, and the criminals know this pretty well, they can use those credentials to log into your other apps that you're using in your organization, which might have even more sensitive data located within them. And frankly, without the training, we're seeing 70% higher of these attacks go through. 90%, as you can see, of breaches are caused by human error. That's been true as long as I've been in the IT industry. I've worked with Datto for the last 6 years. I've been in security for the last 10. And that statistic has not changed. The 90% of breaches are caused by human error is a huge part of this. And like I said, the bulk still is sat with phishing attacks today. So what do these attacks look like? What should your employees be looking out for? Well, that's part of what we're trying to educate them on. We've got a few examples here, and they're actually quite compelling. The first one is you have been invited to view a document. It might even name a colleague that's shared this document, enticing your employee to click that link. Once they click on that link, step 1 is done. Another example, your UPS package is out, and that could be UPS, DPS, etc. We've got many different options, and they're always localized, but actually, you know, your delivery is being delayed, you need to rebook it. These kind of emails we're used to receiving legitimately. So when they come through, it's very hard to distinguish if you're not looking out for the right tells. And again, fraudulent activity. I've certainly had it where my son has gone to his friend's house and logged into Netflix account, and I get, "Are you sure you've logged in here?" We're all used to these kind of emails, these contacts. It looks legitimate. It entices you to click that link. Now, again, another example here would be, the classic, you have had many purchases on your credit cards. Can you please log in to confirm these are the case? Here is your login ID. Again, educating employees to not log in, but actually go directly to their service, directly onto their app for their credit card, directly onto the website, not using these links to go through because there are just too many that aren't legitimate. And ultimately then getting them to log in with their credentials. Now, again, the credentials can expose for company credit cards in this example, but it also can expose for the other apps that you're using. And unfortunately, too many times people are learn it. Now, the credit card one's pretty well known. You might think, well, my employees might not fall for that. Well, how about this one? LinkedIn, you recently requested a password request. This looks exactly the same as the legitimate piece. And it's exactly the same if someone is compromised. Did you mean to request this password change? Well, again, this looks compelling. Clicking on that link, asking for their credentials, opens them up to being exposed in that manner. There's many different examples. The point being is we've built this into a training platform and a phishing simulation platform to make sure that, number one, your employees are educated. Number two, they're tested at the end of those educations. So it's video-based content, very engaging. It tests to make sure that they actually understood what they've seen as well. And then ultimately, teach them what are phishing attacks? How do they look like? What should I be on the lookout for? The final piece of the puzzle here, it will send out phishing simulation attacks, i.e. fake phishing attacks, to be able to test your users and make sure that actually they've understood. Not only does it test to see if you've got a weak leak in your organization, the secret behind all of this as well is if employees know they're being tested, they're more astute at looking out for these attacks. If they know they're going to be tested and potentially, named and shamed or called over to have additional training, they're looking out for those testing emails. They're looking out for phishing attacks. It's an incredibly effective way of mitigating the risk that otherwise your business is exposed to. So this is very much a managed service that comes from Qlic. They make sure that these are relevant for your organization. There are both standard campaigns that can go out, but also be able to be customized for your specific industry. You can make sure that it's not going to be on every Friday at the end of the month. It's going to be staggered so that actually they can't predict it. They're constantly aware and looking out for these kind of attacks. It's raising the awareness, raising the understanding, and ultimately making sure that we're mitigating the threat landscapes that come so heavily from our employees.